Hinduism is the religion of India, containing a pantheon of gods and goddesses, hinted at our hymn that we just sang, Bring Many Names. It seems that every village has its own version of the religion. It seems to be the opposite of Unitarianism, the belief in one God. Hinduism seems to be infinitarianism, the belief in countless gods. Brahma is the creator, Shiva the destroyer, Vishnu the preserver or redeemer. And each of these gods have a goddess consort. Saraswati, the goddess of speech and wisdom. Parvati, the mother goddess. And Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and good fortune. And then Vishnu has many incarnations, avatars, gods in human forms. They come to earth at various times in history to rescue human time. The most famous of these are Krishna and Rama. The mother goddess has many forms, from Shakti, Durga, Kali, which cover all aspects of motherhood from nurturing to protective rage. And then there are the children and the consorts of these gods and goddesses. Hanuman, the monkey goddess, Garuda, the bird that carries Vishnu, and Ganesha, the elephant-headed son of Shiva and Parvati. But all of these gods are but manifestations of one God, Brahman, as we read about in the Bhagavad Gita today. Brahma is the universe, the known and the unknown, matter and non-matter, referred to as the universal self or the universal soul. In the early 19th century, a man named Ramohun Roy wanted to return the focus of Hinduism to this overarching God. In their article in the Dictionary of Unitarian Universalist Biography, Marilyn Richard and Peter Hughes write, Roy was a Hindu monotheist who made early translations of the Vedic scripture into English, co-founded the Calcutta Unitarian Society, and later founded the Brahmo Samaj. He successfully campaigned against sati, the practice of burning widows. He read the Quran and discovered monotheism. His mother's family had sent him to study, where he studied Sanskrit and the Vedanta and the Upanishads. And he noticed that in these oldest of Hindu scriptures, there was a monotheism that was reinforced. In 1820, Roy wrote a book about Jesus, emphasizing Christ's moral and ethical sayings, called The Precepts of Jesus, The Guide to Peace and Happiness. Citing the great commandments of Jesus and the behavioral prescriptions of Matthew 25, he contended that such passages, Jesus had laid out a complete path of salvation through service. And in his second appeal and final appeal, Roy used a historical critical study of Christian scripture to show that Jesus was not divine and not part of the Trinity, and that salvation came through the teachings of Jesus, not vicarious atonement. He went as far as to publish William Ellery Channing's landmark sermon, Unitarian Christianity, in Hindi. His writings were published in Unitarian journals, and he was a big influence on Emerson and Thoreau, and most notably Emerson's essay about the oversoul, where he argues that the human soul is one with the oversoul or soul of God. This is essentially the same as the Hindu concept of Atman and Brahman. Atman is the manifestation of Brahman throughout the universe. Atman is the true self of each human being in humanity, and it's equal to Brahman. Emerson wrote, "The excellence of Jesus and of every true teacher is that he affirms the divinity in him and in us. We learn that God is, that he is in me, and that all things are shadows of him." Thoreau wrote, "The yogi, absorbed in contemplation, contributes in his degree to creation. He breathes the divine perfume, and he hears wonderful things. Divine forms traverse him without tearing him, and united to the nature which is proper to him, he goes and acts as animating original matter. To some extent, and at rare intervals, even I am a yogi. Margaret Fuller, another transcendentalist, expressed it in another way. I saw that there was no self, that selfishness was all folly and the result of circumstances. And it was only because I thought the self real that I suffered. I only had to live the ideal of the all, and all was mine, so that for that hour I was taken up to God. That sense of the ideal self being unified with the great self of the universe. There is much about the Unitarian Universalist confidence in humanity that is supported by the understanding that we have divine potential. The relationship between Unitarianism and the Brahmo Samaj in India continued throughout the 19th century. And people that came out of the Brahmo Samaj were the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore. In 1895, Jabez Sutherland was traveling in Europe and the Middle East, and they recruited him to continue on to India to negotiate a settlement among three factions of the Brahmo Samaj. He not only reunited the factions, he revitalized the movement, and his interest in India was more political than religious, and he became vice president of the Home Rule League of America, an organization promoting India's self-rule. He contributed 15 articles to the League's radical journal, and he edited it for a year. And he collected many of his articles and essays in the book India in Bondage in 1929, which was suppressed by the government in India, but Time magazine praised his outspoken, if extreme, criticism of British rule. Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore sent him letters of gratitude. John Haynes Holmes, at the same time, was a Unitarian preacher in New York, who in 1921 declared that Gandhi was the greatest man alive in the world. He was a humanist, and he wrote, "If I believed in the second coming, as I do not, I should dare to assert that Gandhi was Jesus come back to the earth." Holmes was basically a humanist, but he thought that the religions were human efforts to point to something universal. He wrote, "God is revealed to us in the world of men, of human experience. In the soul of every man is latent the Spirit of God." In other writings, he writes, "The Mohammedan and Hindus and other pagans, so-called, need not become Christians to be saved. No longer is there a distinction between paganism on one side and the one true faith of Christ or Moses on the other. Religions are many," says the familiar adage, "but religion is one. Religions are many as the parts of one basic and inclusive religion." Humanity, for all its endless and tragic divisions into tribes and clans and nations and races, is still of one blood. So religion, for all its divisions into churches and cults and denominations of competitive world faiths, is still of one spirit. The Brahmo Samaj still exists today in India, and if you go to their website, you can see their ritual of diksha or initiation. And it's something that you might find in a Unitarian Universalist congregation. God is a spirit, is to be worshipped in a spirit and truth. His worship is immediate and spiritual. To love God wholeheartedly and to do his will, inspired by the love of God, constitutes true worship. No offerings, sacrifices are necessary for divine worship. The voice of God in the heart of humanity is the true Scripture. No book, no saying of any person is to be regarded as infallible and as the sole means of salvation. But truth is to be reverently accepted from all Scriptures. Besides, we are also to study reverently the vast book of nature, as well as books on science, philosophy, literature, and history, and gather knowledge from them for our spiritual welfare. Throughout much of the 20th century in the United States, as humanism developed, God language has been used less and less. But in our congregations, there's been an outgrowth of humanism, which was feminism, the real looking at women as equals. And then as women began searching for feminine images of the holy, there became curriculums in our RE classes, such as Cakes for the Queens of Heaven, which help women reimagine their power, using these myths and traditions that have been had contained images of the goddesses. And the Hindu goddesses are part of that neo-paganism that is growing in some circles of Unitarian Universalism. Probably the most dynamic goddess is Kali, the mother goddess of destruction, often portrayed as standing on her husband, Shiva. Destructions of old forms are necessary for a new creation to occur. The postmodern deconstruction of the patriarchy is the energy of Kali at work. At the other extreme is Sita and her husband Ram. She's a Tammy Wynette, stand by your man type of goddess. She stays loyal to him while he gets caught up in all the public life of being a prince. He rescues her, then he abandons her. He's not very consistent, but she is ever faithful and raises his children. He's jealous, and he wants her to be purified by a fire ritual to return to her. And she refuses, knowing in her heart that she has been faithful. And so she calls to the earth goddesses and merely gets swallowed up by the earth rather than return to her suspicious husband. This story, the Ramayana, is India's most popular love story. And they're considered ideal forms of love between men and women, which seems bizarre to us in English speaking, but we revere Romeo and Juliet, so who are we to judge? Saraswati, the wife of the creator god Brahma, is a river of wisdom that flows through the world. And the second verse of the hymn that we sang really captures the essence of this goddess. Strong Mother God, working night and day, planning all the wonders of creation, setting each equation, genius at play. This sense of intelligence and wisdom, the wisdom behind the throne, as it might be, characterized in more patriarchal systems, really speaks to a strong feminine image. And it's an image that cuts across cultures. In Jewish literature, such as the book of Proverbs, they speak of wisdom as a feminine force, and they're almost like a goddess. Wisdom is referred to as she in some passages of the book of Proverbs. And I'm sure we're all familiar with the Sistine Chapel, with God's hand reaching out to Adam. But underneath this arm is a woman, the goddess Sophia, the goddess of wisdom. So that same type of idea of feminine wisdom being present at the point of creation is even in our Western traditions. Feminism has helped us reimagine the cosmology, with masculine forces balanced by feminine forces. Christian cosmology, especially that of Protestants, is almost devoid of feminine power. In Hinduism, the gods and goddesses are both present. And then Gandhi represents the merging of the male and female, a nonviolent male. Defeated the British Empire. The rifles of the realm were impotent. He engaged in weaving, a feminine task, as an act of rebellion. At his prayer meetings, Gandhi often sang a chant to Sita Ram, the divine couple, signifying the unity of male and female. And it begins, Ragapati Raghav Raja Ram, Patipavan Sita Ram, which translates, Lord Rama, chief of the house of Raghu, uplifters of those who have fallen. And it continues, Sitaram, Sitaram, Bhaj Pyare to Sitaram, meaning beloved praise to Sita and Rama. And then in the next verse, it goes farther in trying to unify the concepts of the holy. Ishwar Allah Teranam, which means God or Allah is your name. Because Gandhi longed for a unity between the Hindus and Muslims in his country. And it concludes with Sabko Samte Di Bhagavan, which means, Lord, bless everyone with wisdom. Bless everyone with wisdom. Whether it's a theology or a theology, a philosophy, which means a lover of wisdom. You use are dedicated to this free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And this search takes us around the world. We may look to the heavens, we may look to the material world. But our transcendentalist heritage and our Hindu brothers and sisters tell us to look inside. The holiness of the universe is within. And the traditional Hindu greeting, Namaste, means precisely that. The holiness in me salutes the holiness in you. Namaste.
Please rise.